the field of aspiring 2020 Democratic candidates, the Me Too movement looms large. Still, the Senate Democrat who led the charge against Justice Brett Kavanaugh, Dianne Feinstein, is throwing her weight behind former Vice President Joe Biden instead of, for example, Democratic Senator Kamala Harris, who hails from the same state and may run. Trace Gallagher is looking into a surprising, very early endorsement tonight. Hey, Trace.
Shannon, if California Democratic Senator Kamala Harris decides to run for president, she won't have the backing of her California colleague Dianne Feinstein. Today, the five-term incumbent said her preferred choice for president is former Vice President and Delaware Senator Joe Biden. Quoting here, Joe was chairman of the Judiciary Committee when he came to this place. I've watched him as vice president. I've seen him operate. I've seen him perform. He brings a level of experience and seniority, which I think is really important. But Biden was also Judiciary Chair during the Clarence Thomas Supreme Court confirmation and has been widely criticized for his handling of the Anita Hill questioning. To this day, Biden says Hill was vilified and that he wishes he could have done more to prevent those questions. Critics say he chose not to do more. Dianne Feinstein has also been criticized by Republicans for her part in bringing forth uncorroborated and decades-old sexual misconduct allegations by Christine Blasey Ford against then Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. Meantime, if Joe Biden does decide to run in 2020, he could get a boost over Bernie Sanders. One of the reasons Sanders did so well against Hillary Clinton in 2016 is because he dominated in states that voted by caucus, winning 12 out of 18. Experts say it allowed him to capitalize on his small but fervent base of supporters. But several states that caucused in 2016 will hold primaries in 2020, and primaries tend to have higher turnouts and favor candidates with wider support. For example, in 2016, Bernie Sanders only won 11 of 39 primary states. Though Sanders' 2016 campaign manager Jeff Weaver says switching from caucuses to primaries will have zero effect on a Sanders 2020 run. But if the caucuses don't damage a potential Sanders run, sexual harassment allegations might. More than 24 men and women who worked for his 2016 campaign say it was replete with sexual violence and harassment. Sanders says that will be addressed. Shannon.
Trace Gallagher, thank you very much. So, will Democrats line up behind Biden at the expense of Sanders? Lots to discuss there. Time for tonight's Power Panel. Fox News contributors Leslie Marshall and Guy Benson, and opinion editor at the Deseret News, Boyd Matheson. Welcome and Happy New Year to all of you.
Hey, Happy New Year, Shannon.
Okay, so a couple different things I want to talk about with Bernie Sanders. First of all, I want to play a little bit of his apology after this letter came forward and the allegations among a number of people who worked on his campaign in 2016.
So I certainly apologize to any woman who felt that she was not treated appropriately. And of course, if I run, we will do better next time. I was a little bit busy running around the country trying to make the case.
Leslie, I'll start with you. I mean, there were people on both sides of the aisle, including a lot of women, who felt like that wasn't exactly the best apology. I'm sorry if someone felt a certain way. They feel like he could do better and maybe he should take another stab at it.
Well, I think, and I'm with those women that feel that way, or men that feel that way as well. Look, you know, you have people that said, we came to individuals within the campaign. It's the Bernie Sanders campaign. He was the captain of the ship. He needs to know more. He needs to have done more. Going forward, I think it's great that they're going to have a dedicated toll-free hotline. So if anybody feels uncomfortable or wants to make a complaint, that is set up. I think that's a good first step. But I think more has to be done. We're in a Me Too movement, and we've just had a record number of women sworn in today in the House and the Senate and Congress.
Boyd, do you think long-term it does anything to him if he decides to run again?
I don't think it's going to have a long-term impact, but it's going to be based on what does he do next? What does the campaign look like? Who does he have in key positions within the campaign? They were a very white, very male, top-end heavy leadership over the campaign. And so a lot of it's going to be, does he really engage in the conversation, and does he do something to change the dynamics of the dialogue? Or does he just kind of keep making half excuses, half issues?
Well, to that point, though, Guy, I heard people discussing today this, one reaction was they were too white and they were too male. A lot of people thought that's sort of ridiculous. I mean, it doesn't get to the fact of who was potentially engaging in inappropriate behavior. I mean, that doesn't have anything to do with race or gender. Anybody can be guilty of that kind of behavior. And it really, if you say the way to solve our campaign problem is to make it more diverse based on race and gender, instead of hiring people with the best skills or the best political instincts, I mean, is that the way to go?
No, I mean, I'm pro-merit and I'm against identity politics, which I think is often toxic. But that is not the problem, as you allude to. The problem is there was apparently rampant behavior, not just one or two complaints, but dozens of people who either experienced it themselves or saw it. And for Bernie, who is at the head of the campaign, sort of the CEO of this corporation, he wants to run the country, to say, oh, I knew nothing about any of this. Sorry if people were offended. I was a little busy. I don't think that's a great answer, A. And B, if he runs, and if the Democratic field is packed, which I think it will be, and things start getting nasty, I think this could become a serious problem from him if there are especially females on those debate stages who feel like, and I say stages because they might have more than one,
right.
And they feel like he is a threat. They want to box out some of his voters. This could get dredged up, and if he gives answers like that, it's not going to help.
Well, and as much as Democrats have been talking about this idea of diversity and a fresh new class of faces and people coming through the ranks and through their bench, I mean, consistently the polling continues to show three white guys at the top: Beto, Biden, and Bernie. Not in that order, but I know they're concerned about that too. So we'll see when the rubber meets the road whether it's really a more diverse ticket. All right, I want to turn to this issue too. Rich Lowry had a piece out today that talked about Democrats' opposition to the border wall and the fact that many of them have voted for similar things in the past, but now they have gone a whole new level. Part of what he said here about the fact that they don't seem to want any kind of infrastructure at all. He says in the piece, their opposition to President Trump's border wall is now so total as to be nearly indistinguishable from opposition to any serious infrastructure at the border at all, Boyd.
Yeah, I think their biggest problem is that they are on the verge of doing something that is either just irresponsible or irrational. They're getting so far down the path of we're just going to say no to everything, calling the wall immoral and all of those kinds of things doesn't do anything to advance the cause. And it's getting to the point where the American people are saying, wait a minute, are we not a country? Do you not believe that we should have any kind of border at all? And I think the one thing that the Democrats have to remember, especially in the House now that they're in power, is restraint always works. If they want to use this as a fight just so they can have a fight with President Trump, they'll probably lose that in the end. Restraint always works, and just because they can do something to keep the government shut down, to just keep things as they are, doesn't mean they should. And so they need to take a look in the restraint department and look at the rationality department to make sure they know what they're doing and why.
Well, and Leslie, Rich raises this idea of the rationality of a double standard or something by invoking President Obama, and this is what he says. He says Democrats are treating the notion of a wall as practically a human rights abuse. President Barack Obama routinely droned people without generating as much high dudgeon as Trump does, asking for $5 billion to better fortify our southern border. I mean, Leslie, is this all political?
It's not all political, but really, where is the motivation for Democrats to fulfill a campaign promise of a Republican president that many of them, with a 40-seat gain and a huge blue wave in the House, campaigned on, along with immigration? Look, what Democrats need to do, and I think they will come out ahead, even if the Senate says no and the president doesn't sign it, is they have to look at comprehensive immigration reform, things that are really going to secure our border, and a wall isn't going to do it. The majority of people that come here undocumented and stay come via plane. In the state of California, we have sanctuary cities on a state level that have to be addressed. So I think that, quite frankly, if they speak to what the people want and elected them to do, and they do pass something that is comprehensive, that includes border security without a wall, a physical wall across the southern border with Mexico, I think it will be a win for the Democrats, because I think that's echoing the sentiments of the people, so say the polls in the election.
Well, and also in this Rich Lowry piece, Guy, he says that he thinks that the president probably has the upper hand here, but the way this has been rolled out is not working. He says Trump has the better part of the argument, but his lurch into the shutdown with no discernible strategy and his scattershot pronouncements make it unlikely that his view will carry the day.
Yeah, the Democrats are wrong on the merits on the immigration issue in many respects, but the president and the Republicans, by extension, have bungled this entire thing, because they've basically said, through the president, that we're going to own the shutdown, and then, yes, we're going to pass this thing out of the Senate unanimously. Oh, wait, we don't like that anymore. Now we won't sign the same thing that we just passed out of the Senate. It's sort of a mess when it comes to messaging. But again, I think the Democrats, I agree partially with what Leslie said, that there has to be a multi-pronged approach to this, but one of those elements has to be a physical border, a physical barrier along more of the southern border. This is something that almost every Democrat in the Senate voted for in 2006, voted for years later in the Gang of 8 legislation. And if Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, is now saying that walls are immoral, by logical extension, should she not be campaigning to have the existing walls torn down as a moral crusade against these horrible barriers? I mean, that is a ludicrous public policy position.
Well, something tells me we're not going to get that piece of legislation, even if she doesn't give him $1 for the wall at all. Guy, Boyd, and Leslie, thank you all very much. And Leslie, you did hear Guy say he agrees with part of what you had to say.
I was going to ask you, Shannon, we have that on tape, right? We have that on tape?
We do. All right, thank you all very much. Come back soon.
Thanks, Shannon.
Bet.